I mean, everyone saw how I did in the last mock draft. At some point, you're just like it's not interesting. It's not a challenge to me. It's a snooze fest. To be perfectly honest with you, like I like drafting in real leagues where there's a challenge here. That all of you guys just whatever. And by the way, we're not even going to show the results of this upcoming mock draft.
We absolutely are.
We're just
I'm looking at the team right now. It's a disaster.
It's redemption for Jay and Lawrence out there.
I have some work to do. I don't like my team so far in that league.
Kirk is your third best skill position player.
It's gone off the rails quickly.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry. Served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. That's right, it's mock draft day. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher, Lawrence Jackson, and folks, the excuse train is already rolling in from Matthew Berry.
You know what, though?
Your team sucks, Matthew.
Wait till you see what I did here in this draft, and I'm going to tell you why. Because like a phoenix, I rose from the ashes. Rough start, I'm not going to lie, but then I turned it around. And what I did is I think people will be interested in this because I pretended I was one of you guys. I'm like, all right, if I screw up my draft early, how do I compensate? How do I dig myself out of this hole? And that's what I did. And you'll see how I dug myself out of this hole. And I think this will be very useful for people at home that are watching or listening to us to understand what happens. And there you go. That was my Sunday, by the way. For the people that are listening, it's a shot from my Instagram when it's boat day, but you're in the middle of a draft. #FantasyLife. And so I was on a boat, but everyone else was on the water mat behind me.
It's very
I
apt.
had to be near my phone so I could draft.
It's very apt you were near water because you took an absolute bath in this draft.
Stop
You
it.
really went
We'll
down.
get there.
We'll
You
see.
really went down.
We'll
It's
see.
a bad team. It's a bad team.
Jay off the top rope with the elbow.
Yeah, it's fine. What I appreciate the wrestling reference, Lawrence. What I will show you though is that what I did is I followed one of my rules. There's 7 habits of highly effective drafters, and that article's up now on NBCSports.com, Rotoworld.com. Of course, I'm a company man. It's 100% free. Draft Day Manifesto 2023, the 7 habits of highly effective drafters is up now, and I used one of my habits, and I will show you throughout the process of the show. And you guys, here's what's going to happen after I'm done. You guys are going to go like,
Okay.
wow, Matrix level. I haven't even thought about these chess pieces over here. We got Australian checkers over here.
Australian
Is that a game?
It's marbles.
Yeah.
It's marbles. You play with marbles.
Yeah. We play with
strange
Tank
place.
Dell, who you're going to be relying on in your
Wide receiver one.
Tank Dell's going to be a thing this year. You guys make fun of Tank Dell. Tank Dell's going to be a thing. Mark my words. I want my words marked. Tank Dell's going to be a thing this year.
We have a lot to get through the draft.
Yeah,
But
let's
before
do
we
it.
do, get the Roto-World Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Go to NBCSports.com/draft guide and use promo code Berry20 for 20% off at checkout. All right, Roto-World Mock Draft 3.0.
Or J5.
J5.
I'm sorry,
Connor 5.
Connor 5, J10 are the other promo codes that will work.
Lawrence
Lawrence
don't
won.
forget. Progress.
Lawrence 1, yeah.
Number one, baby.
Yeah.
That's right. One
J10, Connor 5, or Barry 20 at checkout for the NBC Sports Draft Guide, the Roto-World Draft Guide.
Roto-World Mock Draft 3.0. Here's the format. We've changed it every single time. We are back to a 12-team. Now we're going half PPR, but we're getting away from Superflex. That's what we did in 2.0. So 12-team, half PPR, 1 quarterback, 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, 1 flex spot, 6 bench spots, and as always, we shake up the draft order. Roto Pat kicked us off with the number 1 overall pick, followed by producer Pete, producer Dameon, producer Steven. Barry, you picked at 5. Lawrence, you were at 6. Producer Chris at 7. Denny, me, Penn State Blake, Kyle Dvorchak, and of course Jay with the last pick in this draft.
I know what everyone's thinking, like, how does this crappy show have 4 producers? And the fact of the matter is like, people switch off. Not all full-time, just so you understand. They're not all full-time producers. They pop in and out. They're all full-time producers with NBC Sports. They're not full-time on this show.
That's
they have
correct.
other duties.
Yeah.
And I think it's just NBC's attempt to just like, well, maybe Pete can fix it. Like, no, it's still crappy.
You know what?
Maybe Chris get in there. You know what I mean? Like, it's a whole thing.
It reminds me of the Baltimore Ravens wide receiver situation at the moment, where you got to just throw in a
Try
lot
something.
of darts.
Yeah.
You got a lot of darts at the
Just
dartboard.
hoping.
You got Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Odell, Devin Duvernay. One of them might hit.
We'll get this guy off the street and
Yeah.
see if it works.
Yeah.
And, here
Nelson
we are.
Aguilar.
Now, one of the habits that I suggest you do in my 7 habits of highly effective drafters is make sure you understand the rules before you draft. I did not do that.
Your exact words were another mock draft. We just finished one.
Exactly.
When you're on the clock.
I'm in 8 billion drafts. You know what I mean? Literally, just before we went on air, I had to make a pick in another draft. Like, I'm in so many drafts between mock drafts and actual leagues that I play in, and then I'm helping other people out with their. So it's just a bunch. So I didn't realize that we were a 3 wide receiver league. That will play itself out here as we start our
running backs.
And that takes us right to round 1.
I'm just letting you know. I'm confident in the fact that I did not read the rules or open up the text from producer Dameon as to what our rules were. I'm just like, I was like, another mock? I really have to do this effing thing? All right, so here we go.
Takes us to round 1. Justin Jefferson goes first off the board, followed by Christian McCaffrey, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Austin Ekeler for you, Barry, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, and then Nick Chubb.
To me, the most surprising thing in the first round, obviously, I was surprised to get Ekeler at 5. That 3 wide receivers went off the board. Now, understand, of course, it is a 3 wide receiver league, so that does make somewhat sense. But I was, and it is a half-point PPR, which I guess lessens Eckler's value a little bit, but still, I don't know. Just money in the bank. We think that offense takes a big step here. Austin Ekeler, of course, a proud FantasyLife.com investor as well. I just want to be honest about that. But, I got to support my investors.
The minus 300 cashes with that mention. I like it.
Yep.
We're about to see a story unfold, and the story is Matthew Berry if he doesn't have the number 1 pick. It's like going from Tom Brady as your quarterback to Matt Castle, which Randy Moss lived.
Matt
Look,
Castle,
the vibes are different this week. This week it was, we 20 seconds into the show. I'm ashamed of you guys. You shouldn't be. Because, hey, I'm actually kind of feeling how you was feeling last week, so I can't wait to get in this.
All right,
I
let's get
woke
into
up ready to talk about this mock draft,
All right.
Matthew Berry.
Should we talk about the first round?
Yeah, Lawrence,
Okay.
you take Travis Kelce at 6 after Jefferson, McCaffrey, Chase, Kupp, and Ekeler all come off the board. Obviously, the 6th spot in the first round, very popular spot for Kelce.
Yeah, and it's just solidifying the floor, which is 80 catches, 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns here. So I get my tight end position early despite it being a 3-receiver lead. What was kind of shocking to me was that Bijan went off as RB3 when you have to start 3 wide receivers. But again, in a league with these pro drafters outside of producer Pete and Matthew Berry, you got to get your guys early.
Yeah, Bijan, absolutely my guy. I think he finishes the season as RB1. Otherwise, there's no shot you take him that early in this situation. And honestly, I thought Diggs was going to be there at the 1-9 for me.
Yeah.
But Denny ends up taking Diggs. And Jay, you close out this round with Nick Chubb, so you kind of fell into the same spot as me where the top wide receiver talent was gone.
Yeah, more or less, and you'll see my next pick getting a wide receiver. But with Chubb, with half PPR, I think that really plays to Chubb and lessens the gap between him and Bijan, McCaffrey, Ekeler, these guys who are more reception dependent for their value. So I think Nick Chubb, I wouldn't be taking him over McCaffrey, but I don't think the gap is that significant in half PPR.
It's certainly lessened in half PPR. I just like the fact that Lawrence is taking shots at me. I picked Austin Ekeler at 5. You have an issue. I just want you to be on the record right now. You have an issue with Ekeler at 5.
No, that's just one pick.
There you go.
That's just one pick,
All right,
though.
Let's get into round 2.
Let's get into round 2. All right, so 1 for 1 in Lawrence's eyes. But Lawrence was in a mock draft this weekend. What was it? Or industry mock you were in? What happened?
Yes.
Right. What didn't Ekeler go in the 7th round or something like that?
No, I got Christian McCaffrey at 6.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
But I got Breece Hall in the 7th round.
Yeah.
Then somebody drafted Corey Davis. So, yeah.
The retired Corey Davis.
Yes, the no longer
Retired.
playing.
That's what I would
NFL
just say
football.
here is this just because you put up a Twitter handle, an X handle saying you're a fantasy football expert.
Which I do not.
I know it, neither do I. And people are aware of that. They've watched me for years. But I'm just, when you're in an industry mock and you're taking Corey Davis, it's just come on.
People change their minds all the time.
That's right,
Matthew.
Jay.
Corey Davis comes back.
Could be this year's Tom
He
Brady. some are
unretires to
saying.
become a non-relevant fantasy
Exactly,
factor.
you're going to ride that upside.
You just mentioned Tom Brady. I would
He's a
actually
bad pick
argue.
even if he was in the NFL, Jay. Corey Davis would be a bad pick even in the NFL, even if he was active in the NFL.
true.
And he is retired. But
Who would you draft right now, Corey Davis or Tom Brady?
Tom Brady.
Right.
There's a better chance Tom Brady
Yeah.
plays football this year than Corey Davis. Better chance Tom Brady plays meaningful fantasy football than or meaningful 2 fantasy managers.
The meaningful fantasy football continued in round 2. Jay, you had the back-to-back picks. You said you felt comfortable with your wide receiver options here. You take CeeDee Lamb, followed by Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Barry's ride or die, gone. Blake takes
And
care
by
of
the way,
Wilson.
and you'd say this for Kyle Dvorchak, who took Amon-Ra St. Brown at the 2-2. He had a good run at NBC Sports. We're going to wish him well in the future. He had a really good run, did a lot of good work for us, and we can't wait to see where he lands next.
Yeah, he's actually here today, so tough reason to find out why he's here today.
His exit interview.
Yes.
He's here to turn in his badge.
Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Chris Olave, Tony Pollard, Jalen Waddle, Derrick Henry, Jalen Hurts, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, and Josh Jacobs, who is back in the fold for the Raiders. So Barry, back-to-back running backs in a 3-wide receiver league.
Yeah.
You love to see it.
Yeah, thanks. This is not how I plan to start. But again, I think this is intuitive and instructive, right? I mean, take what the draft gives you. No, I'm dead serious, though. Hey, hang on for a second.
Sure.
Because I feel like I really was hoping Waddle would fall to me. Stupid Lawrence.
Good job, Lawrence.
Right?
Right in front of him.
But the fact of the matter is that the wide receivers that are available to me at that spot, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, Calvin Ridley, I felt like that would have been a reach there at the 2-7, right? And so the fact of the matter is I didn't want to go quarterback that early. I didn't want to go Mark Andrews in a half-point PPR. So I felt like, again, you want to talk about half-point PPR helping Derrick Henry. There's an argument to be made Derrick Henry's a top 5 running back in this format. Easy. He could easily be a top 3 running back. And so, I just, again, take what the draft gives you. And so I felt like at that spot, I thought Higgins or Devontae Smith as my wide receiver 1 in the middle of round 2 would have been a little bit of a reach. So I just went with the best player available, which was Derrick Henry. I think I have 2 borderline top 5 running backs to start the league.
Yep, that's fine. You went with my Sam Hinkie approach of take Embiid, Julian Okafor, and Nerlens
You're definitely 2 for 2. I did the same thing with Derrick Henry in our mock draft last week. Best player available. Didn't want to take the receivers or quarterback. Made the right move here. I actually like Steven, our producer, taking Jalen Hurts in the second round because, again, if you want your quarterback, this guy's not making it back to you. So I actually that's kind of my favorite pick of this round.
You know what's interesting? When you said again, what I thought you were going to say is, and again, if I suck up to Steven, maybe I get on the show more.
No, I don't even got to do that.
That's where I thought you were going with that, Lawrence. That's what I thought you were saying.
Me and Steven
I really like
past
producer.
that point. We like brothers now.
Okay, got it.
One of our 9 producers, by the way. Steven, rotating in. Thank you, Steven. All right, that takes us to round 3, and it kind of piggybacks off Lawrence's
But I
point.
think that's an important discussion point. Are you guys okay with Hurts in the second round? I understand what you're saying about get the guy that you want, but in a 12-team 1-quarterback league, as much as I love Jalen Hurts, this feels early to me.
I mean, I waited until round 3 because I knew I'd get one of the top 4 guys that I liked in round 3.
Yeah,
as
I
you
think
see right here.
at that point, 3 wide receiver league, I would have taken T. Higgins or Devontae Smith in that spot.
All right. And so you don't like the Derrick Henry pick either?
No, I'm okay with Henry as I guess he and Jacobs are the 2 last elite running backs if you're not putting Jonathan Taylor into that boat.
And to be clear, the Josh Jacobs news that he had reached a new contract agreement with the Raiders and would be back in camp, that had not broken at the time of this draft. I think Josh Jacobs would have gone earlier than the 212 had done that. So I just want to be clear about the timing.
Yep. I probably would have taken Devontae Smith there. I think I'm just higher on him than most, but I think Henry's a fine pick. It's just, we'll get to the rest of your draft.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because right now, you're 2 for 2.
The 2 picks look great. It's a matter of how you make up for it. So when you get to round 3, the quarterbacks stare down, finally lets down. So Pat takes Jonathan Taylor, followed by Mark Andrews, Travis Etienne Jr., Calvin Ridley, Josh Allen goes to Barry's team. Lawrence, you take Patrick Mahomes. Then followed by Jahmyr Gibbs, Keenan Allen. I take Lamar Jackson, Joe Mixon, DK Metcalf, Rhamondre Stevenson. So guys, after Jalen Hurts goes off the board a little early in round 2, we have 3 star quarterbacks come off the board in round 3.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I guess, Lawrence, you can talk about why you took Mahomes there, but for me, I just realized as I started seeing the wide receivers, right, and I'm looking at, here now in round 3, Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf goes later in this round. I thought to myself, this is where my galaxy brain started to expand. I basically said, look, I'm clearly going to be weak at wide receiver, bar none. I know that. So my goal now is I need to crush every other position. I'm now doing zero wide receiver in a 3 wide receiver league.
Oh yeah.
Not exactly ideal, but my point is okay, again, I just think this is important. When you find yourself at the end of runs or you find yourself in a draft and you're getting stuck, don't chase. Seriously, don't chase. I'm just okay, you know what? I can either just keep chasing lower wide receivers and then I'm weak across the board, or I can just say, you know what? I'm clearly going to have the weakest wide receiver group of this league, and I'm going to put myself in position to fix that by the end of this draft. and it'll be something I work on throughout the season, but I need to make sure I crush every other position. And so that's why in round 3, I go with Josh Allen, who to me is the best available quarterback once Hurts is off the board. He's my number 2 quarterback.
Yep, I think that's fair. And just in a nutshell, it's tough to hit submit on Keenan Allen or DK Metcalf over Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And so I now see I have the opportunity to get Patrick Mahomes as the QB3 in this draft. So because I've already taken Travis Kelce, I'm doubling up, going with the stack instead of taking. And I like Keenan Allen this year. Chargers, Justin Herbert probably throw nearly 700 times, but when I got the chance to get
300 of them going to Austin Ekeler, obviously.
Probably, probably 200. But why not get the best stack in fantasy football?
I followed the same strategy as you guys in this round. I just went for points rather than position with Lamar Jackson. I mean, we all believe Lamar Jackson has a range of outcomes that includes being the top quarterback at his position. If you don't take him there, you're starting to get into a different tier of quarterback.
And, by the way, and I'll just say, so Jonathan Taylor goes 3-1. I think that's interesting. I think that's, again, given the current situation, I think that's about right. Into the, I'd actually been more comfortable with him at the end of the third round, but I think he's a third-round pick. I think he's a third-round pick until we know we have a better sense of where Jonathan Taylor goes. So he goes to RotoPad at the top of round 3. I thought this was interesting as we just sort of look at the running backs that go in this after Jonathan Taylor. Producer Dameon takes Travis Etienne at 3-3. Producer Chris takes Jahmyr Gibbs at 3-7. And then Joe Mixon goes to Penn State Blake at 3-10. I think that's a great draft pick by Blake. Mixon going that late, no one, I don't understand why so many people are down on. I get the efficiency numbers, but there is no one else there. He is going to get a massive workload on one of the best offenses in football, and I think the touchdown regression happens in a positive way. I know he was, he had the one big game and then just didn't score a lot, but I get it. It's not going to be pretty, and it's going to be like 3.3 yards per carry, but he's going to get 20 touches on a team that's going to score a ton of touchdowns.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing in a way about Rhamondre Stevenson, who I got at the end of the third round, effectively a 4th-round pick there. I think with the Zeke stuff, it might have gone a little bit too far with pouring cold water on Rhamondre. Rhamondre's still going to be the feature back there. He's still going to get the bulk of the receiving work. They still don't have a high-octane passing game. I think Rhamondre should still be a mid-third-round pick.
I mean, remember, last year, Dameon Harris had what the Ezekiel Elliott role is going to be.
Yep.
And yes, Harris missed a little bit of time, but and Zeke doesn't really miss time, and that's one of the things he's so durable. And maybe because he's Ezekiel Elliott, he gets a little bit more run than Dameon Harris. But Rhamondre Stevenson was a top 7 fantasy running back last year. And so he's going – I'm with you. I think you and I are on the same page with Rhamondre Stevenson, Jay, in terms of buying the dip. The other thing that I think is interesting here is Jahmyr Gibbs. That strikes me as a little high for Jahmyr Gibbs, especially in a half-point PPR.
That's the key.
I'm coming around to, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. But I actually think David Montgomery is the better value this year. David Montgomery at cost over Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to be – I don't think people realize how much David Montgomery's going to be used this year for the Lions.
Yep. I'd rather have Mixon or Stevenson over Gibbs.
It goes back to the rules of the league. It's half PPR, and that's going to have a monster impact on somebody like Gibbs. So that takes us to round 4 here. Jay, I know you kicked this off with Joe Burrow, and we'll get there in a second. But, Barry, this is where you start to make your chase at wide receiver as you take your first wide receiver in round 4 with scary Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, only the best wide receiver in the actual NFL. He's one of them.
Week one's going to be interesting.
Honestly, I mean, listen,
the top 50.
I honestly think he should have gone a little bit higher than this. I think the toe injury has dropped his price a little bit. And so, look, he's the number 1 wide receiver on what I think will be a better than average offense. And you do have to play 3 of them, 3 wide receivers. I mean, I was hoping to get him back around, just sort of looking at ADP. The truth of the matter is you sit here and you see what happened in round 4. Pat Daugherty at 412 getting Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
That's probably the pick I should have made.
Great
I
pick.
wish I had, I thought maybe Lockett would last one more round back to me.
I did he's almost in the 5th round, which is almost 2 rounds after DK, and we all love Tyler Lockett when it comes to value over DK at that point. But yeah, I didn't think he would go in this round either. I thought late 5th for Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, but it's interesting just some of the seeing Deebo Samuel here in this range. Connor, you took Amari Cooper. Denny took DeAndre Hopkins. I like that value. I'm in on Hopkins this year. Yeah. Producer Chris, Mike Williams, I like that as well. So, this is where people are starting to go more wide receiver heavy. The other thing that I thought was interesting here was producer Pete taking Christian Watson at the 411. That struck me as high.
It's a big upside play.
He could be great.
There is also not a floor there that exists with everybody else in this round, right? Like we like Amari Cooper's floor. We like DeAndre Hopkins' floor, Terry McLaurin. With Watson, Jordan Love has looked good this summer, but there's been plenty of times where preseason play doesn't always carry over to the regular season. So it's just more risk there is what we're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this round, I took Joe Burrow, who I think is maybe being a little bit slept on, where everyone's talking about the top tier of Mahomes, Hurts, and Allen in whatever order you want, and then there's a drop to Burrow. Last year, top 4 quarterbacks were Mahomes, Allen, Hurts. Burrow was 4th, and then there was a massive drop-off to Geno Smith at 5, and on a per-game basis, Lamar and Justin Fields were right there behind Burrow, but I just think Burrow, in that offense, and yes, there is the calf, but I still think that he'll be able to produce at a top 4 level this year.
But you've been so Mr. Justin Herbert this all offseason, and he was sitting there for you.
Yeah, I still just think that Burrow I have more trust in that infrastructure. With Herbert, we're projecting a lot forward that we haven't seen. New offensive coordinator. Also, Herbert, just injury-prone wide receivers as well with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. We don't know what Quentin Johnston is yet. I know what Jamar Chase is. I know what T. Higgins is. I know what Joe Burrow is going to do.
Let's take a look here
Hockenson
at round
also
5.
goes in round 4, which I don't mind that at all. I think Hockenson's going to have a big year.
Let's take a look at round 5 then, where Herbert did come off the board, just a couple picks in this round to Dameon at the 5-3 there. But guys, the pick that jumps out to me is Pete taking Dameon Pierce at the top of round 5. I think in a half PPR league, that's a phenomenal pick. And
I agree.
Pierce will be a volume play for the Texans and a red zone play.
I'll be honest with you. I actually love the first 4 picks of this round. Mine as well. I'm the 5th pick in this round. Honestly, when you think about it. Honestly, this is a really strong round. As I'm looking through the entire round, this is actually a really, really strong round. So it starts with Deontay Johnson. Rotopat gets him. Absolutely love that pick. We think the Steelers offense takes a step forward, obviously, in terms of positive regression. There's no more positive regression candidate for touchdowns than Deontay Johnson. You mentioned Dameon Pierce with Pete. Completely agree there. I like producer Dameon getting Justin Herbert, we just talked about. I think he has a chance to be an elite fantasy quarterback. He was quarterback 2 years ago, so getting him in the 5th here. Brandon Ayuk is somebody that made the love list as well. We talked about there's a chance he's the number 1 wide receiver on that Niners offense. And then I go with Darren Waller. Again, trying to dominate like every position. You guys know how high I am on Darren Waller. Yeah. So getting him at the tight end position. Lawrence, then you take Cam Akers, who I think, again, is kind of a sneaky 20 carries a game.
Yeah, and I actually like Jay's pick here at the end of the 5th round. Najee Harris, that's an RB2 right there. Their last preseason game, Jaylen Warren, he didn't run with that first team when the Steelers offense was running all over the Falcons' third teamers. They ran through them like water, right? But Najee Harris, he got work in the running game, scored him a nice little touchdown, some work in the pass game. So I like that pick right there.
It is interesting though, but Fields and Lawrence also go in this round 5, and that's sort of the tier to me in terms of they go back to back, and that's sort of the tier to me in terms of like, okay, all the quarterbacks you feel really good about are now gone. 12-team league, 8 of them are off the board. Like the next one is Deshaun Watson, and we've talked about this, like wide range of outcomes for Deshaun Watson this year, fantasy-wise. You took Breece Hall at the 5-9. Always good to see when the Jets guy takes the Jets running back.
Yeah, it's a good sign for Breece Hall, I would say.
Right, yes, it is.
I mean, listen, with this, it's half PPR. Breece is going to be ready to start the season, but you're really looking to lean on him in October. So if you feel like your roster at this point can survive the month of September, which I did, I think Breece at the end of round 5 and half PPR is actually right where he should go.
Yeah. Najee Harris, effectively taken him as a 6th round pick. Like the dip on Najee Harris is way too much. Najee Harris had a pretty mediocre year last year, and he's still RB12. And I get the concerns about Jaylen Warren, but Najee Harris is still going to be. He's in place to be the lead back on an improving offense on a team that Kenny Pickett's not going to throw the ball 40 times a game. They're still going to run the ball a fair bit. So I think Najee Harris, I think he should be a late 3rd round pick.
I will tell you that of all the picks of yours that I hated, this is one that I hate less than the other picks.
That makes sense.
I will grant you that.
That's fair.
I will grant you that. Yeah, no, getting him at 5-12 is ridiculous.
Yep.
All right, let's look at round 6. And Jay, I think Barry will actually like another pick of yours as you kicked off this round with Hollywood Brown, and we know the kind of volume and target share he should own in Arizona's offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is a very unexciting pick in a way, kind of shades of Brandon Cooks last year on Houston, taking him. But Marquise Brown is still an excellent wide receiver who's going to get all the usage in the world. And yes, it's not going to be a high-octane offense. It's also going to be an offense that is losing all the time and is going to have to throw the ball. So I think Marquise Brown is one of the most underrated players in fantasy this year.
All right, let's keep moving here. Lawrence, you take Michael Pittman Jr. We've seen some good out of Anthony Richardson as the summer has progressed, and Pittman Jr. obviously the #1 target in that offense.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson was looking for Michael Pittman early and often in their time against the Eagles, and it's also, you should also know too that you're gonna need a little bit more from Alec Pierce and Josh Downs, the rookie. They dropped a couple.
Yeah.
So if that continues, you can only expect Anthony Richardson to lean on their top receiver in Pittman even more. But I like the pick before that, George Pickens. I was gonna pick George Pickens right there. So I think both are solid picks.
Can I just say on Michael Pittman quickly? He's had 270 targets the past 2 years.
Yes.
Like, people forget Michael Pittman, even if that offense, the passing game might be a little bit suspect, like, he's the guy there, clearly. And he's
The
gonna get
hate has
work.
gone too far on Michael Pittman.
Yes.
I 100% agree, and I agree with you, Connor. I do like Hollywood Brown as a pick. Like, again, if you look at his numbers without DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup, just a massive target share, like basically 30% target share. And so I think bringing in Josh Dobbs, like, Josh Dobbs will be able to get the ball to Marquise Brown. Like, assuming he's the quarterback. Whoever it is, whether it's him or Colt McCoy, until Kyler Murray comes back, they'll be able to get the ball to – not always going to be super accurate, but again, he's somebody that can catch the ball at the line of scrimmage. They can create opportunities for him to get yards after the catch. So, yeah, top of round 6, I really like him.
And I think Denny followed the same blueprint, but in their backfield instead, where James Conner, something you've preached for a while here, Barry, is, listen, you don't have to love Arizona's offense, but you know James Conner is going to get the football.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think if you look at sort of the running backs that are going in round 6, it speaks to how this is a really good year to wait on quarterbacks. You got Cam Akers late in the 5th there, Lawrence, and now you're getting into the 6th, right? And you've got James Conner, you've got Ken Walker. Both Cook brothers, both Dalvin and James, go in this round, as does Isaiah Pacheco and J.K. Dobbins. Still not crazy about Dobbins, but the fact of the matter is like we think James Cooks has a breakout. Little nervous about Dameon Harris's usage. If you saw it in the preseason game, Dameon Harris, when they got to the red zone, Dameon Harris came in. He's the one that also cashed in the touchdown. So there may be a little less touchdown equity for James Cook in that Bills offense, but still, ultimately, we think James Cook, is a very viable, RB2 this year. Same with Dalvin. We expect that to be a two-headed monster with the Jets. Pacheco, we expect more passing game usage. So this is a really good, again, it just sort of shows the quality of running back you can get in round 6 these years. This year, especially in a 3 wide receiver league, which makes sense why I went running back to
Get the quarterback, injured wide receiver round 4.
Yeah.
Let's jump into round 7, and you're going to see in this round a lot of people trying to fill out the back end of their wide receiver depth chart here. Barry, you do that by taking Gabe Davis pretty early in this round.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is somebody who led all wide receivers and averaged up the target last year. Almost 50% of his targets came on deep passes last year. They didn't really add anyone to that wide receiver room. I know they've got Dalton Kincaid, who in essence is a pass-catching tight end, but ultimately we've talked about Gabe Davis a lot. In a last year where everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, and yet he still finished as a mid-30 wide receiver. I think wide receiver 32 off the top of my head, maybe 35, something like that. And he was playing on a high ankle sprain the whole time.
Yep.
Another year, he's still a very young player. It's still a very good explosive offense. He's still got one of the best quarterbacks in football. So I'm now in the range of I'm swinging for the fences on, as you'll see, basically as I find myself here, it's like, okay, I'm not going to have like a superstar wide receiver. So I'm just going to take a lot of dart throws of guys that could emerge to be awesome, and Gabe Davis is one of them. And you'll see, like, towards the end of my draft, I draft a lot of those sort of guys.
Yep.
And so Gabe Davis is one of them, I think, a pretty good dart throw.
Yep. Connor, you took Jaxon Smith-Njigba, staying on brand, taking Jets and rookies.
Yep.
Not too concerned about the injury.
Injured Jets, injured rookies. It's just,
It's a brand.
He doesn't like healthy players.
And something we talked about, whenever somebody sees that little red flag next to a player, the overcorrection begins. Jaxon Smith-Njigba was being drafted too high in redrafts before he got hurt.
Yep.
Now, since he might miss week 1, maybe week 2, he's going to be drafted too low because they drafted him in the first round so they can run more 11 personnel, use him in the slot. You always say this, Jay. Geno Smith is severely underrated in fantasy last year, QB5. I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba, now I'm comfortable with him at the end of round 7, where if you had to take him in round 5, maybe a couple weeks ago, nobody should like that.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, there are a couple other players like Jerry Jeudy, who goes at the top of this round, is also someone that would qualify there. I'm a little bit more nervous about Jeudy. That injury seems more serious to me than JSN. Again, we don't know what this Broncos offense is going to be and what Wilson's going to look like. Jeudy has struggled with touchdown production throughout his career. But I do think Jordan Addison at 7-2 for producer Pete. I really like that pick. Producer Steven took Jahan Dotson, which I probably wasn't going to do because I already had McLaurin, but I love the pick there. And I do think this is interesting. At 7-10, Penn State Blake taking Dallas Goedert. Yeah, to me, Goddard is the last sort of.
Yes.
We see Pitts, we see Goddard, we see Evan Ingram. I'm surprised you went with Evan Ingram because I feel like after Goddard, it feels like there's kind of you could wait a little while on tight end.
I think Ingram, he's probably a tier above the guys who are going to go after him in terms of tight ends, just because he's in such a high-octane passing offense. I think Trevor Lawrence will take another step forward. I think that team is going to dominate its division. I think there'll be plenty of touchdowns for Ingram. And just the fact that he had a career year last year with Lawrence and there is that connection, I think that he can outperform his ADP.
And I think the league agreed with you, Jay, because as we look at round 8, I don't believe there was a tight end taken in this round. So that a drop-off after Ingram was significant, and you're seeing a lot of people start to look for depth in their backfield, some upside, and at wide receiver. Lawrence, I think you did exactly that by taking Odell Beckham Jr., who now plays in a Todd Monken offense with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, again, at least to start this season, Odell should be their first option as a wide receiver. Obviously, still right now, the first option is Mark Andrews, but him and Lamar Jackson building that rapport. I like the Rachaad White here. I think you get great value there for a team's clear-cut number 1 in the 8th round. Denny, Mr. Zero running back, takes him here in the 8th round. And if you watched the Bucs the other day in their final preseason game, that's clearly the guy they're going to get the ball to, obviously on the ground and through the air as well.
Jay, you kicked this round off with Courtland Sutton. Kind of underappreciated, it felt like, in this format. Round 8 for Courtland Sutton in an offense that the ball should be coming his way. He should dominate plenty of targets in this offense.
Yeah, Courtland Sutton was getting a ton of hype this time last year, being spoke of in the same breath as Jerry Jeudy. And then he was in the Nathaniel Hackett regime where just everything burned, and now I think it's gone a little bit too far. Like, he still had 109 targets last year, missing 2 games. In his past, he has a season with 72 receptions, 1,112 yards, and I think that he's going to be one of the big beneficiaries of Sean Payton and the Renaissance as Wilson bounces back. And I think, particularly with the Jerry Jeudy injury, I think Courtland Sutton.
I actually do like
Courtland Sutton time.
I do actually like Courtland Sutton. It's interesting. You see this round. This is where you start getting into the question mark round, right? This is the round 8 feels like. So again, DeAndre Swift, not sure of the role, right? Alvin Kamara missing 3 games. You took him, right? Rachaad White. We like Rachaad White, right? Yeah. But all of a sudden, Sean Tucker. My guy, Sean Tucker from Syracuse, getting a lot of reps. Could be more of a committee there. Sean Tucker, Sean Tucker only dropped because of the medical condition, right? That kid can play.
He was great for Syracuse, and if he didn't get hurt and miss really most of the draft process, he probably goes in round 3 of the draft.
That's what I'm saying.
My one concern with the Bucs, besides that, which is very real, now you see the Ryan Jensen news. Unfortunately, he might not play in the NFL again. That line could be one of the worst in football, and I love Tristan Wirfs, but outside of that. You look at the Bucs; they want to run the ball a lot. It's hard to run the ball a lot when you have no good offensive lineman besides Wirfs.
Yeah, that's. Thank you for dropping that football knowledge right there. It's very true. Hard to run the ball if you don't have a good offensive line. No, but you're absolutely right. Which is, by the way, but both Rachaad White and Sean Tucker are both kind of interesting. Both can catch the ball out of the backfield, and so I do think that Rachaad White maybe less so in a half-point PPR, but I like Rachaad White this year. He made the love list as well because I do think volume gets him there, and I think a lot of dump-offs to Rachaad White. I think Sean Tucker for deeper leagues is an interesting name here. But again, you started getting to the question marks. You took OBJ, Lawrence again. Could be amazing. Could be, the fourth guy on that offense. We don't know. We don't know with Beckham. Treylon Burks goes to producer Pete at the end of this round. Again, we don't know about the injury there. I do think Pat getting Tua here at the end of round 8 is really a smart pick.
All right, let's take a look at the total drafted by position. So in this draft, we had 18 quarterbacks drafted. Yes, it's only a 1 QB league, but we had 18 go, 57 running backs, 72 wide receivers, and 21 tight ends. So no surprise the amount of wide receivers taken. This is a 3 wide receiver league, which takes us to a very interesting conversation here, Barry. The latest drafted starters, and we have to start at the top. The last QB1 drafted was by producer Pete, taken with the 10th pick of the 14th round.
It's brutal.
He wasn't very happy with us, by the way. That 17 quarterbacks had already come off the board.
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, producer Pete shouldn't have mocked everyone for taking their quarterbacks. That's what happens. And now, I mean, like, you know, whatever. QB 19 is leading Team Pete into the charge there.
Pete's got some strange opinions. He keeps on knocking on my office door telling me how Baker Mayfield's going to have a big year. He's a big believer in the Baker Mayfield comeback season.
And would you like to trade for him?
Yeah.
Why you didn't draft him?
Yeah, exactly. He may have to. So it'd be interesting to see what producer Pete's team looks like. But can we put that full screen back up in terms of the latest of each positions drafted?
You were the last one to take a wide receiver 1.
I went 0 wide receiver in a 3 wide receiver league.
It's a new thing.
But I do, and Steven went 0 RB basically. He took Dalvin Cook at the 6-9 spot. That was the last person. It was last running. He was the last guy to take a running back. I can't speak English. But I do think this is interesting too. Kyle gets Gerald Everett as tight end 1 at 13-11. I really prefer Gerald Everett as like my tight end 2. You know, it's a little tough to lean on him, but I do think he is one of my favorite like later round tight ends this year.
The one thing that did surprise me with that is I got Tyler Higbee 3 picks after that, I believe. So we talked about how much we really like Higbee.
We really like Higbee as well.
Don't care about tight end.
I mean, I have Higbee ranked significantly higher, so who knows what.
He's going to have his 3 good games this year where he just go off. So
Gerald Everett?
No. Tyler Higbee.
Tyler Higbee is going to be the number 2 pass catcher on a team that's going to be throwing a decent amount because they're not good.
We're taking our first
break. He's going to be a borderline top 10 tight end, Lawrence.
When we're back, it's team breakdowns. We'll look at all our rosters. Roto-World Draft Week is officially here. All week long, we've got drafts, articles, and more from all your favorite Roto-World talent and special guests. Get all you need to dominate your upcoming fantasy drafts. Go to NBCSports.com/fantasy to see the schedule of all that is happening this week.
Roto-World Draft Week, baby.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And we're in the middle of a draft. Well, we just finished one. We're probably starting another one now.
Yes. As soon as we walk off set,
right
draft
after
4.0.
Constantly a draft.
It's like
we'll kick off.
True Detective.
Yeah.
You know, flat circle.
Yeah,
Flat
time
draft.
is a flat,
Draft.
draft is a flat circle.
Barry, let's jump into your roster.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of conversation around this team. Some are saying
some people are saying the best team ever drafted. Some are saying the second best team ever drafted next to the one I drafted last. So, all right, look. So, again, the idea is I knew when Ekeler and Henry fell to me in the first 2 rounds, and it's a 3 wide receiver league, I knew I was going to be chasing wide receivers. So, again, I feel like at running back, I'm really strong. And so the idea is again, you don't need to leave your draft with a perfect team. You do not need to leave your draft with a team that does not move. What you need is you need enough pieces, basically. And so what I chose to do is that instead of constantly chasing, like, you know, lesser wide receivers, like, and you know, chasing bad ADP just to try to like get a wide receiver, I just kept fortifying my team. So I feel really good about my quarterback at Josh Allen. I feel really good about my tight end at Darren Waller. And then in terms of some of my other bench guys, like, so Brian Robinson, here's some of my other running backs, right? Brian Robinson, Samaje Perine, and I got Leonard Fournette. We'll see if Leonard Fournette signs somewhere. I think he will have value at some point this year. I think Brian Robinson, this is a guy who in 9 of his final 11 games had 15 or more touches, 20 touches in 4 of his final 5 games. We started to see him used in the passing game in the preseason. We think the Commanders' offense will be better as well. I think there's a chance Brian Robinson is a very viable starting running back. Samaje Perine, we've heard news that Javonte Williams is going to be on a pitch count at least to start the season. Samaje Perine likely the lead running back in Denver. We know that Sean Payton likes to use multiple running backs. So here's what I've done with those positions. And then I drafted Anthony Richardson at the 10-8. One of the reasons I drafted Anthony Richardson at the 10-8 is because, and you're like, why'd you draft Anthony Richardson? You have Josh Allen. Well, here's why. Because if Anthony Richardson is what we think he can be, then I can trade Josh Allen to fortify my wide receiver room, right? If Brian Robinson or Samaje Perine emerge, or Leonard Fournette signs, I'm making it up, but Jonathan Taylor gets traded and Leonard Fournette gets signed with the Colts, all of a sudden he's the starting running back. Then I can trade one of my other running backs to fortify my wide receiver room. The idea is to give yourself, instead of just chasing bad wide receivers, what I did is I tried to give myself some building blocks so that I can maneuver and fix that spot. And in terms of my wide receivers, I have a combination of high upside guys like Gabe Davis. I got Christian Kirk, 23% target share. We know Ridley's going to be there, but still we expect that to be a high octane offense. You talked up Rashid Shaheed during our sleepers and bust segment. Grabbed him. Tank Dell. You guys make fun of me. Tank Dell's going to be a thing.
Okay.
Tank Dell is going to be a thing in Houston. Maybe not initially, but early. And then I grabbed Adam Thielen, who no one likes Adam Thielen, but 4 for 48 and a touchdown in the last preseason game. He's going to get a lot of targets. This is a guy who's had over 100 targets through the last 3 years as well. He was 7th in red zone targets last year. He was top 7 in red zone targets. Caught the touchdown from Bryce Young. Over the weekend. I think he probably leads that team in targets. And so, again, no one likes Adam Thielen.
Bryce Young might.
Yeah,
that's the point.
the
He's
trusty
a professional
veteran.
wide receiver. Right. And so I'm just saying, I just took some shots at wide receivers. I sound like I'm trying to talk myself into my wide
Yeah, you
receivers
do. It's
because
all
I
good,
am.
though.
I was gonna
It's
say-
all
I
good
am.
because you do.
I'm
You do.
owning it.
Yeah.
But I'm owning it. But my point is and I think this is important. When you find yourself in a draft as opposed to chasing a position, then what you do is I'm blowing that off a little bit. I'm going to take some high upside flyers or some undervalued players later. But ultimately, I'm going to give myself some trade pieces at other positions that allow me to fortify that wide receiver room. Because I think I have really strong running back depth. If Anthony Richardson becomes a thing, then I obviously can trade Josh Allen. So that was the idea behind my team. So again, I think given the fact that I started this draft without realizing it was 3 wide receivers, I think I did pretty well, honestly.
What place is this team getting in the league?
Oh, this team, I will tell you exactly what's going to happen. So,
You gonna trade?
so this team wins this league, and I'll tell you how.
Oh, all right.
I'll tell you how.
Wins six?
This team gets into the playoffs like it sneaks in, on a points tiebreaker and gets in.
Yeah.
And then what I will do is that I will trade probably producer Chris maybe, or producer Pete, maybe like Denny. I'll trade with somebody that doesn't know what they're doing exactly. And I will, that's what I'll do is I'll be able to rip somebody off in the league and just fortify my team. I'll play the waiver wire like a fiddle, like I always do, master the waiver wire. Yeah, and then I cruise, at the end of the year.
Listen, the
Obviously.
Niners burnt pick 3 in the draft on Trey Lance, and they're still in the Super Bowl mix. So you
There
never
go.
know.
I'm just
Matthew.
saying.
You never know.
I'm just saying. I mean, right? We saw some of these draft picks. I mean, there's a couple of guys in the league that you can kind of easy pickings, right? We agree with there.
Yeah, no question.
Lawrence, let's take a look at your team. Obviously, you have the Mahomes-Kelce connection, which is going to be dynamite. But how about the rest of your roster here?
Yes. I love starting off with that stack. Who wouldn't? I get Jalen Waddle, last year's wide receiver 12 on a points per game basis in the second round. Love that. Now, my running back room isn't elite, but they're definitely in that next tier with Aaron Jones, who was RB12 last season, and Cam Akers, who was a top 5 running back the last 7 weeks. Now, it gets dicey for me at receiver. I got a bunch of good players here: Michael Pittman, Brandon Cooks, and Odell Beckham. I'm just looking for one of those guys.
Good players 3 years ago. Absolutely. If you could put this team in a time machine, Lawrence.
Michael Pittman, 141 targets last year, right?
True.
I think he beats that this season.
Wow.
He
might be
beats
right.
that this season. My favorite pick of this draft, though, is getting Khalil Herbert in the 9th round. He is the Bears' lead back, albeit we don't expect him to get a full workload, but there's times where on this roster, he'll be in my lineup in a flex spot. Then we go a little lower. I take Nico Collins, who right now should be the wide receiver 1 for the Texans, but he's got to do it this season because he's got a Tank Dell coming behind him. He's got John Mechie. These young guns is they ready to do something. Then I picked Daniel Jones as my second quarterback, and for a little different reason than you, Matthew. Injuries happen. We never know. I got Patrick Mahomes. He got through the Super Bowl on an ankle injury that he probably wouldn't have been playing in the regular season. So if I could have a guy like Daniel Jones to come in, that'll be solid for me till he gets back. Take Cole Kmet as my tight end 2. Then the best player in the world, Donovan Peoples-Jones, the Browns' second leading receiver from last season. Secondly, it was Amari Cooper than Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Very much the Udonis Haslam
right.
roster spot.
Did you see that deep ball Deshaun Watson hit him with the other day?
Listen,
Beautiful.
The fact is that it does seem like from the preseason it is very much going to be Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Elijah Moore when they go 3 wide in terms of the wide receiver. Those are going to be the 3 guys. Cedric Tillman's further behind, by the way. And just worth noting, because of your deep and undying love of Donovan Peoples-Jones, Lawrence, we just want to point out that today at the happy hour, Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yes.
Drinks free.
Yes,
DPJ,
sir.
come on by.
Yes,
Free
sir.
drinks for DPJ.
Jay, let's look at your roster here, where we know you went running back early with both Chubb and Rhamondre Stevenson, but I think you found plenty of value at the wide receiver spot after that.
Yeah, I think a lot of these guys just went around, half round, a little bit too late. Like Najee Harris is effectively my 6th-round pick in the flex. And I just think that this team is relatively deep. It's very happy to get Jalen Warren at the end of the 9th round as well. So if there is any funny business with Najee Harris, then I'm going to have the Steelers running back that matters. And some flyers late. Rashad Bateman, who we've talked about, has the chance to emerge as the #1 wide receiver on potentially a top 3 offense.
Yep.
And then tight end was probably my weak spot in the draft, so I just took different shots. Evan Ingram's there, Dalton Schultz, used the end of the 13th round pick on Chiga Okonkwo, so I think one of those guys will pop enough. And then if there is a problem with Joe Burrow's calf, then I got Jared Goff in the 14th round, who I think is a very viable starter. So I think just a very solid team, Matthew.
I would agree with you. It's super annoying, but I think top to bottom it is a very solid team. It's a B minus is what it is. It's a very solid.
It's
maybe
an A minus.
B.
It's an A minus, and we both know it.
Yeah, it was a solid B. Getting Warren to back up Najee Harris. I think you have an underrated wide receiver room in terms of Lamb, Hollywood Brown, Courtland Sutton, and then you've got, as you mentioned, Bateman, and we'll see if Jameson Williams. You have Jameson Williams and Jared Goff. You potentially have a late season stack there, which I like.
By the time 12th round came around, I was taking Jameson Williams. I knew I was a playoff team, so I started just fortifying for that playoff
There
run.
you go.
Yeah, you could afford to wait through the 6-game
Exactly.
suspension. All right, I did a little bit of that as well as we close out with my team by taking Alvin Kamara, who we know is dealing with the suspension, but having Jamal Williams on the bench, that's an easy play there in that flex spot for him or Juju Smith-Schuster. Listen, Lamar Jackson, he could be QB1 this year. He has to stay healthy. But Lawrence, like you said, if he doesn't, I have Aaron Rodgers on the bench. I have no problem taking a backup quarterback as long as the value is right, especially in a league where I think we knew each other well. The waivers are not going to be pretty at the quarterback position. Sorry, Pete. It's tough luck. At running back, definitely some risk here. I mean, obviously a rookie in Bijan Robinson, but under Arthur Smith, the volume is going to be insane, both on the ground and in the pass game. And I think he gets in the end zone plenty, where taking him that early in half PPR, I'm comfortable with it. You got to be patient with Brees because he's not going to get that full workload in September. But in October or November, you could have one of the most valuable running backs in fantasy football. But you need to hold the fort while he's not ready. And that kind of brings me to getting Raheem Mostert as late as I did, who is the RB1 in my opinion for Miami's offense.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, no, that's a nice pick. I don't love Juju Smith-Schuster as your 4th wide receiver.
Take that, Connor.
But
Haymaker.
No, well, but you've got JSN who might miss a month as your 3rd wide receiver. So then you're like, all right, well, who's your 4th wide receiver? Well, it's Juju Smith-Schuster, who's struggled with injuries himself, and we just don't know what he's going to look like in what we expect to be a run-heavy offense in New England. Juju is one of those guys that's like, he'll have 3 good games this year. Just will you know when those will come? And then I think who's your final wide receiver? Isaiah Hodgins. One of 8 billion New York Giants.
But a starter.
Receiver. At the moment, we'll see if Jalen Hyatt gets past him or not. I mean, I think I have the starting wide receiver that you want on the Giants in Darren Waller. I mean, I think that passing offense goes through Waller. So I do think your wide receiver depth is a little suspect, but I agree with you. I think look, Lamar's going to be awesome. Kittle's fine, and then your running backs are good.
Yeah. I'm just disappointed that you only took 4 combined Jets and rookies. I had that number set at 5 flat, so you've gone under there. But
I know your market's well, Jay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. We are going to take our last break. When we do, it is time for last call. We have a draft on Thursday, and we need to figure out how we're going to set the order. A real draft.
Another one? All right, back into the Fantasy Football Happy Hour set. Now joined, we finally got rid of Jay and Connor. I've been trying forever. Finally got in some actual knowledgeable people in here. So Pat Daugherty at RotoPat, Denny Carter at CD Carter 13, and of course Kyle Dvorchak at Kyle Tweets Here. Have you thought about changing your name to at Kyle X's Here?
No, look, I can't. We're gonna ride the Twitter moniker out for the end of times, hopefully.
Fair enough. So all three, of course, along with Lawrence, host the Roto World Football Show, which airs 3 times a week during the football season. It's a terrific podcast. Be sure to check that out as well. And you guys are obviously been part of our mock drafts. Really appreciate it. Have you guys in studio. We're doing the Fantasy Football Summit here, the NBC Sports Fantasy Summit. So it's a great treat to have these guys on the set. Let's break down your teams here. And Pat, let's start with your team right here. I thought this was interesting. So we did this mock draft before the news came out that Josh Jacobs had signed his 1-year deal with the Raiders and is back in camp. Jonathan Taylor, as of the draft and as of this taping, still his situation is resolved, and those were the guys that you picked at the 2-3 turn at the end of the second round and top of the third. Talk to me about how you approach those two running backs specifically.
So yeah, we're hoping by the time you watch this, Jonathan Taylor's on a different team, maybe preferably the Miami Dolphins, but only time all summer I had the 1-1. Excited to get Justin Jefferson, the best player in fantasy football.
Sure.
But I know then, coming back all the way to the 23, 24, I'm going to have trouble getting impact players unless I'm willing to take a risk. So I take 2 guys with warts, 2 guys with question marks, a guy who led the league in yards from scrimmage last year, a guy who was the 1-1 last year. Those are some gambles I'm willing to take on the 2-3 turn. So a bit of a risk, but we think the Josh Jacobs one's been taken care of. We hope the Jonathan Taylor one's been taken care of next.
You bought the dip. You bought the dip.
You absolutely bought the dip. They could pay off in a huge way for you. And I love, by the way, the rest of your wide receiver room as we look through your team. 2 at quarterback, Jacobs and Taylor, your starting running backs. You mentioned Jefferson at the wide receiver 1, but then you've got Tyler Lockett and Deontay Johnson as your wide receivers 2 and 3. 2 guys, Pat, that I think are going way undervalued this year.
No, it's the same principle with Jacobs and Taylor. It's hard when you're it's great to have the first pick, but it makes it hard to accrue impact harder. And so I took guys kind of with question marks again. Or Tyler Lockett, we don't know how long JSN is going to be out, but I view Tyler Lockett as like the undead zombie of fantasy football. He's the wide receiver 22 every year, no matter what. And Deontay Johnson, the guy's got to score some touchdowns, right? I mean, hopefully it's not challenge accepted from him on like another 1 touchdown season, but he is bound for some positive regression.
He is too talented. I think Pickett next step, and he's getting too much target for something fluky like that to happen. He's the poster boy for positive regression. And to the point about Scott Barrett, the point about Tyler Lockett, my friend Scott Barrett put out a great tweet just talking about showing how like literally every single year Tyler Lockett beats his ADP. It doesn't matter where he gets drafted. It's always, but anyway, so shout out to Scott Barrett. And then just Njoku was your tight end. You have Dobbins in the flex. And then talk to me, pick one guy from your bench that you're really excited about. You've got Jerry Jeudy, Zeke, Rashee Wright, Rashawn Johnson, Jalen Hyatt, a bunch of rookies there, and Greg Dulcich at the 14-12 spot.
Couldn't help but notice J.K. Dobbins was on your hate list. It made me feel great. But at least he's my RB3. He's just trying to bank some carries. Very excited about Rashee Rice. Even though, I'm excited about a player who could be the number 4 receiver to begin the year, but just trying to get in on that Patrick Mahomes action, and it's such a good price. Yeah. One of my very final picks, and just trying to attach myself to that Chiefs Death Star. And, just because the second-round receiver failed for the Chiefs last year doesn't mean it's going to happen again this year.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's like a late investment, and Patrick Mahomes was that.
If you're taking a late flyer, why not take a guy that could be catching passes from Patrick Mahomes? I get it. Let's move over to Denny and your team right here as well. Appreciate you not wearing a cardigan. I thought that was going to happen. You did not.
Say, Matthew, you need to mention me being a St. Louis City SC brand ambassador, by the way.
Yeah, you look good. You look good.
That wasn't so convincing. Yeah. I'll say.
Yeah, well, you got to work it in. You got to really shill the way I do. All right, Denny, same thing. So this is interesting to me. You went 0 RB so you start with Trevor Lawrence as your quarterback. James Conner and Rachaad White are your 2 running backs. So you waited a while on running backs. You got Conner in the 6th. You got Rachaad White in the 8th. Yeah. But normally when most people go 0 RB, they usually have elite talent at the tight end or quarterback position. Your tight end was Dalton Kincaid. So in essence, what you did was you decided to stack your wide receivers. You went Diggs, Olave, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins is your 4th wide receiver in the flex. You've also got Zay Flowers, Romeo Doubs as well. Talk to me about sort of your approach to this draft. and what you were seeing here. Was that a thought? Is that something you went in trying to do, or is that just how the draft played out for you?
Believe it or not, this is what I was trying to do.
No, it's nice. Take us through this.
And I'm in this kind of format, especially when I can start up to 4 receivers, I'm trying to win the flex. And I feel like being able to put Hopkins or Keenan Allen into that flex spot is a much better flex option than most teams will have. Now, this hinges really on Connor and White, A, staying healthy, and B, kind of being, cheat codes in PPR or half PPR, or whatever the format may be, where, they're getting a lot of checkdowns from their quarterbacks who are likely going to face a lot of negative game script, have to throw a lot. That's the hope here. And then, on the bench, I have some running backs who may fall into volume depending on how injuries go this season.
Yeah, Tyler Algier, Tajay Spears backing up Derrick Henry, of course, Algier in Atlanta, and Deuce Vaughn, one of the people that might be backing up Tony Pollard there as well. No, I think it's a really interesting approach, and I'm glad you brought up Connor and Rachaad White, because I think if ever there was a year to sort of go zero RB or modified zero RB, it is, because there are guys like those two, like Cam Akers, Dameon Pierce is starting to creep up draft boards, but there's a number of guys where I think you can get massive volume late that people aren't paying attention to. Brian Robinson is another guy that could flirt with that. Isaiah Pacheco is another guy that is going to probably potentially get like 17 touches a game.
James Cook.
Is another guy, right?
You're making a great point. In like the RB 24 to 32 range this year, there's way more touches than there usually are in that range.
Yeah, people are going crazy with their wide receivers this year. It makes some sense. Like, passing is up. The league looks like it's got a lot of elite quarterbacks, but in turn, that means that you can get a lot of touches in what used to be, these guys were like 4th, 3rd, 5th round picks, and now you can just throw Rachaad White as your RB2, and where that did not used to be the case.
8th round.
Yeah, listen, it's not pretty, but again, volume is king in fantasy football, and we expect these guys to get volume. All right, Kyle, now let's go to your team right here. You did a similar build as Denny. So your quarterback is Deshaun Watson. You got him at 10-2. But, basically you kind of waited on running backs. Your starting running backs, Kenneth Walker, you got in the 6th, Miles Sanders in the 7th, because your strength of your team is your wide receivers. A.J. Brown was your first-round pick. My ride or die, Amon-Ra St. Brown. DK Metcalf is the 3rd wide receiver. Again, a strong flex in Deebo Samuel. You have Godwin as well on the bench. Javonte Williams, Kadarius Toney, Rashad Penny, Dameon Harris, and then Luke Musgrave, one of my favorite late-round flyers, rounds it out. Gerald Everett is your starting tight end. So let's talk about your team here. To me, what's interesting is that you had a similar build to Denny. So my first question to you is, same thing. Is this something you attempted to do, or is this just how the draft fell to you, picking from the 11th spot?
Yeah, I think it's a strong strategy, but I definitely go into the draft being adaptable. Had stronger running backs fallen to me, there's no reason for me not to take them, but I love the idea of getting Deebo Samuel, or when I have guys on bye, Chris Godwin in the flex. The strategy is at least that I'm trying to beat everyone at the flex spot while losing very little in terms of running back. And when you can plug in Ken Walker as your RB1, I don't think I'm losing that much ground as much as I am making up, except for maybe a team like Denny's, who's built similar to mine, could actually go toe-to-toe with me in the flex.
Well, it's interesting, right? So let's talk about your running back room. So you have it's a fragile I feel like it's a fragile zero RB build, because Kenneth Walker, Miles Sanders, and then you've got Javonte Williams, Rashad Penny, Dameon Harris. So we'll talk about Harris in a second, but the rest are talented guys, but all with injury histories.
Yep, there were definitely bets on talent. I think Denny's is a much tighter distribution of, I just don't see how Rachaad White doesn't get the touches. I could see Zach Charbonnet stealing a lot of work from Ken Walker, but when we're so confident that he's talented, and from what we saw as a rookie, I'm pretty sure this dude is talented. I'm willing to stretch a little bit to bet on talent, even if there's a little more risk with him.
Last question for me. I was a little surprised because your only quarterback is Deshaun Watson. So we talked about earlier in the show, 18 quarterbacks get drafted in this 12-team league. Some of it just to screw over Pete, but because Pete. But part of it also is I think there's concern about injuries, and it's a deep league with a lot of people that obviously all know what they're doing. Any concern with you about Watson? Because to me, he's one of the highest variance quarterbacks out there, especially where he's going.
Yeah, there are concerns, but with how late I got him, that's the price I'm willing to get on the concerns. He's a guy who has the ability to lead the league in passing, could lead the league in passing touchdowns. We've seen that ceiling from him before. Is there a little bit risk? Sure, but I'm okay saying I'm going to take on that risk for the ceiling, and if it doesn't pan out, I can still hit the waiver wire and have a shot. I'm not going to compete with the other teams at quarterback, but I'm beating them in the flex. I'm competing with them at running back, so I'm taking the risk.
But that was the question. So did you ever have a thought of like, let me go grab a second quarterback, or you're gonna ride with Watson, and if it doesn't work out, you'll see what's out there on the waiver wire?
Yeah, I'm just gonna hit the waiver wire, especially with how my team is built, like kind of fragile at running back. High risk, high reward. I need those roster spots to keep taking shots at running back.
Yeah, even with Tua, I was like, I've got a guy with a really concerning injury history. Second quarterbacks were starting to go. I was like, man, do I need to protect myself against another Tua concussion? But always someone on the waiver wire. And quarterbacks, even when 18 are drafted, those are some of the first people thrown back to the waiver wire.
And what's
the second the bye week start
and the 19th who didn't get drafted?
Yeah, the second the bye week start, people are throwing back their QB2s.
Fair enough. So let's take one more look once again at what the latest each position was drafted, I should say. So you see, we're making fun of producer Pete. He gets Russell Wilson as his QB1 from the 14-10 spot. Steven is the last to take a running back. He gets Dalvin Cook at the 6-9. I'm the last person to get a wide receiver. I take Terry McLaurin at 4-8. And then Kyle, you were actually the last one to grab a tight end in Gerald Everett. One question for you, because we just looked at your team, Kyle, but again, was that a I'm just waiting on tight end, or just sort of how it fell to you? You just didn't see the value until Everett came around in the 13th.
Yeah, it's more of how it falls. I actually do think the elite tight ends are really strong this year. My team just didn't get a chance to take one where I wanted to take one, and once the elites are gone, I really don't care to pay up for the tight end 11 versus the tight end 15. I don't think the difference between those guys is strong enough that I need to dip in, whereas if I can get an elite one, I still want to be doing that. The draft just didn't give it to me.
Yeah, and by the way, you did take Luke Musgrave with your last pick again. Absolutely love him. He is dominating preseason. Yeah. I think he's going to be a thing this year. Let's look at Pete's team. What happens when you wait until the 14th round to take a quarterback here? So he does have Wilson. So his running backs are McCaffrey and Pierce. Wide receivers, Devontae Smith, Christian Watson, Jordan Addison. Andrews is his tight end. At running back, Pacheco. Then he's got on the bench. He's got Treylon Burks, Antonio Gibson, Tank Bigsby, Marvin Mims, Kendra Miller, and Jonathan Mingo. Pete annoys the hell out of me. I got to admit, I think this is a pretty good team.
It is. I'm into this team. I love this the Addison, Watson, Smith wide receiver trio. I mean, Mark Andrews. I think I was actually really close to getting in here. I think I threw my phone across the room when he was drafted because I really wanted Mark Andrews. I think he has that ceiling outcome. Definitely.
He went at the 3-2 spot. Yeah, I was surprised he lasted all the way to the third. Yeah,
I was too. So I think his team is solid.
I will say to Pete, if you wait until the 14th round to take a quarterback, I would usually hope for my third receiver to have actually played in the NFL before.
No, I like this. I even like the stacking up the 4 rookies with the final 4 picks. Like, those are strong breakout candidates, and I don't think you need them to be playing for you in week 1. I'm confident in Jordan Addison. So I like it.
Yeah, I think if you're Pete, what you're sitting here is, so he got Addison at the 7-2. He got Treylon Burks at 8-11. Yeah. He got Marvin Mims at 11-2 and Jonathan Mingo at 13-2. I guess basically what you're saying is, listen, I need one of those guys to pop.
Yep.
That's all I need. I got 4 lottery tickets, and I need one of those guys to pop. Burks obviously flashed last year. He's a little bit banged up, so he bought that. But again, with McCaffrey, Pierce, Pacheco, and Antonio Gibson, that's a really strong wide running back core, plus Tank Bigsby and Kendra Miller, some guys that could pop later in the season as well. And to your point, if Russell Wilson doesn't even have to be Russell Wilson of 2 years ago. He just has to be reasonably competent, right? And he's got the stack with Mims maybe. So, I think actually this is pretty good. But you're right. There is some fragility with the wide receiver. It's going to be a while before he gets production from that group. All right, let's move on now to Steven. He was the last one to take a running back. Let's take a look at his team here. So he gets Jalen Hurts at the 2-9. I still thought that was a little bit early. Dalvin Cook at the 6-9 and A.J. Dillon at the 8-9. The rest of his running back room, well, he's got Devon A-Chain at the 11-4, Deontay Foreman at the 14-9. Hoofa. But he has to crush everywhere else, and I think he probably did. Cooper Kupp at the 1-4, Calvin Ridley at the 3-4, Brandon Ayuk at the 5-4, really strong wide receiver room. Jahan Dotson at the flex at the 7-4, Quentin Johnson at the 9-4, and then KJ Osborne at the 13-4. So really strong wide receivers, guys. Hawkinson is his tight end at 4-9, but that's an interesting running back group.
He needs the Green Bay Packers to never, ever pass in the red zone.
Yes,
because if A.J. Dillon is not scoring 8 to 10 touchdowns for him, he has no running back touches whatsoever on the bench.
I love Steven's my boy, okay? and this is with all due respect. But you gotta, when you're building this sort of roster, you have to turn that Osborne and that Cousins pick into running backs, into late round running backs.
I totally agree with this. And I think, Denny, you and I both went running back in this round for the first time, too. He just went a few picks later, and I think we beat him to the punch on getting the breakout running backs by like 5 picks.
But he also has A-Chain. He did take Devon A-Chain there.
And he's hurt. But
right. No, but I mean, like, yeah.
Hopefully
but, like,
behind Jonathan Taylor.
Right. So, hopefully he gets. It was interesting there with a couple of his picks. But maybe the thought process is because his running back room is so strong is that he did what I did. Now let's take a look at my team because I also waited on wide receiver. I had a weird wide receiver, Ekeler and Henry built to me, dropped to me. I didn't expect Henry to be there at the 2.8.
So you got trapped into taking him. He fell so far.
Yeah. So anyway, you guys can. We've already talked about my team at the top, but you guys feel free. If you like the team, if you hate the team, by all means, go through it. Pat, your thoughts.
My only complaint is that you have a receiver in Adam Thielen who would be the oldest person at this table by far. That is my only complaint.
It's fair. I think you underestimate exactly how freaking old I am. But I appreciate that.
And I was also very upset when you took Tank Dell, by the way. This is the first league, I believe, where I have not landed Tank Dell.
Jay Croucher does not. You and I are on the same page here. Tank Dell's going to be a thing.
He's going to be a thing. Sure, he might not be the first few weeks of the season. No. He might be like the wide receiver 4, but there's too many things working in his favor for him not to be.
Can I ask you, Matthew, what's the plan with Anthony Richardson on your bench? Are you going to wait till he blows up and then maybe trade him?
So
that sort of thing.
Yeah, this is my thought. I talked about this top of the show, but just in essence, basically, once I got Ekeler and Henry, and I'm just like, okay, I'm clearly going to be weak at wide receiver in a 3 wide receiver league. I decided let me just try to crush at some of the other positions. So I grabbed Josh Allen. I usually wait a little bit longer on quarterback. I think Darren Waller is in the mix for being a top 2 fantasy tight end. Obviously, he needs to stay healthy, but I think he's going to have a huge year. And so my thought is with Anthony Richardson is that if Anthony Richardson becomes a thing, then I could trade Josh Allen. Like I'm a big believer in if you're getting taken out of a run, instead of just drafting somebody to have somebody at that position, build up strength at somewhere else and give yourself depth to trade elsewhere. You can always trade a Josh Allen. Like again, I have Brian Robinson and Samaje Perine as some of my running backs. Leonard Fournette. I'm hoping Jonathan Taylor gets traded to Miami and then Leonard Fournette gets signed by the Colts.
It's all interconnected.
And if that happens, then I could trade Derrick Henry. If Robinson pops in the way that we think he might be able to, Javonte Williams is going to be on a pitch count. So that's the idea was. Because my wide receiver room is obviously very weak. I think I probably have the weakest wide receivers in the league. So that was the idea, is try to build up strength elsewhere to give myself some options trading into the season.
It can be hard to trade quarterbacks. It's not hard to trade quarterbacks to score rushing touchdowns. So you approach that you have 2 quarterbacks who are going to have actual trade value, which is not easy to do.
Any your thoughts, Kyle?
I think if you have Ekeler, you have Henry, and you got Brian Robinson, who I love. Like he's a guy who we talked about. Like you can actually lock up touches for not premium prices these days with the way people are drafting receivers. Don't worry about Leonard Fournette. Don't worry about Perine. Throw more bullets at receiver. But I like the way you approach running back to start. Like the draft gave it to you. Henry, like deep second round. You got to take that.
Hard to argue.
Pretty nuts. I would say that Gabe Davis going in the 7th is wild to me because. He was going in the 3rd. I think in this draft last year, I took him in the 3rd, and I was happy about it. It was horrible, but I was happy. So nothing has changed for him. He's still the number 2 in Buffalo in a pass-heavy offense. He's probably healthier than he was last year. So getting him in the 7th is a steal, I think.
And obviously, I have Josh Allen, so I create the stack there as well, which is helpful. Yeah, I mean, again, sort of trying to take shots there. All right. Well, listen, it has been a jam-packed show. Thank you to Jay and Connor, but most importantly, thank you at RotoPat, at CD Carter 13, at Kyle Tweets here. We'll see if it ever changes to at Kyle Texas here. Go check out the Roto World Football Show.
So if you're looking for a creative way to set your draft order, the Orioles have found it. Their manager, Brandon Hyde, took batting practice surrounded by his players. And this from Andy Koska. It appears was determined fantasy football draft order. The farther Brandon Hyde hit the ball, the higher the draft pick. For example, Adley Rutschman and Ryan Klemek are team 2 and have a high pick because Hyde hit it far, although not out of the yard.
So yeah, they wrote all the players' names on baseballs, and then the guy does batting practice, and however far the ball goes is where you end up drafting. Every Major League Baseball team has a fantasy football league in their clubhouse. So I've heard from a lot of Major League players over the years. A number of them follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you call it. That's about as creative a draft order sequence that I've seen.
Yep. So for our draft, Connor, I know you're a big Yankees fan, so maybe get Aaron Judge to just blast our names out of Yankee Stadium and then where they land.
Yeah, but it depends if he's actually going to play that day, Jay.
That's
That's
true.
the big
Very good
question.
one.
So.
Yeah.
What are we going to do for our draft order? This is really your lane of creativity.
I mean,
feel
we
like.
could do an NFL Blitz tournament. We could do we've got our little whatever you call it, 2-minute drill
You
thing
want
that we've got
to
there.
pick 12?
Yeah, I mean, might as well.
Yeah.
Listen, I've seen you throw, you Australian.
Well, they hit the baseball. Just throw the football. Whoever throw the football the farthest, there you go. Get out there.
Says
leave
former
it on
college player Lawrence Jackson Jr.
Lawrence really knows
I wasn't
how
a
to-
quarterback, though. Not a quarterback.
It's factually correct.
Should be some athletic feat, like run the 40 or something, which having run against
No,
Lawrence
again,
on the
once
field,
again,
Definitely
that's
was
terrible.
40-yard dashes. There we go.
Maybe we should see who we
go.
can get a picture with. Who's the most famous person we can get a picture with on
Then
Instagram?
then I would be drafting Justin Jefferson then.
I'm just saying.
Number 1 pick, baby.
Lawrence's Instagram is filled with surprises. There are a lot of different ways to do it. Some sort of. I was in a league once where we all had to take the Wonderlick, which was and who got the best score on the Wonderlick.
Where'd you land?
Middle of the pack. Wonderlick's hard, man. The Wonderlick is hard.
I could imagine.
I was like middle of the pack in terms of the draft order for that. That was a pretty good one too. But you know what? Like, tweet at us, X at us, whatever. At Matthew Berry TMR, at Lord Don't Lose, at Connor J Rogers, at Croucher JD. Tweet at us using FF Happy Hour draft order, or just hashtag draft order. Tweet at us, give us some suggestions. We'll pick one and we'll do that because we got our big show draft, the one that actually matters, the one that I will crush like a grape. Even though I've given all my secrets, all my sleepers to these animals here, I will still manage to do it. Be awesome.
Yeah, you'll read the rules for that one.
I will read the rules for that one.
If we use your suggestion, of course, we will roll it in on the show, and we'll keep everybody updated how it goes. That's it for us. We'll be back tomorrow, as always, 12 p.m. Eastern, live on Peacock. For Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, Lawrence Jackson, Jay Croucher. See you tomorrow.
It's closing time. Go home. Peace out.
Good clock.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.